Okay, 1204. So we're going to start. This is my new title page. We're going to try it out this time. And what we're going to be talking about today is the Sds Content Editor. This is what we're going to be talking about, the content editor for SDS Physical when we're doing the Inventor models. I hope to talk for only 40 minutes. Sometimes I go longer. And we're going to have a Q&A afterwards. The Q&A, I'm going to open it up to the microphones this time. The last few times have been chats. And maybe I can get more talk going by using the microphones. The video will be posted on our YouTube's website, just like the others. If you join the join the website, you get an alert when it gets put up. Otherwise, just wait for a day or two. Probably Friday it will get up. Sometimes I add stuff to the video if I feel I missed something or described something, or I could describe it better. Typically, we have a host, Dwayne. Dwayne isn't with us today. He is busy working on some new sales, obviously. And myself, Steve Kaufman, is the host. I want to remind people of the support. We have support, and please use the SDS support email. If you leave a phone call, it tends to get lost between people before it gets moved to the support. So you get a lot better, quicker response if you use the email. All right. So we're not going to talk about my spelling mistake, but it's right down here. Okay, so what I want to talk about is the content editor. I am going to bring up a model. And right now, when we're in SDS Physical, when we come up into our model and we want to place items in the model, we need to have the metadata. So if I look at my settings and come up here, I have a lot of data here. I have all my wires and cables that I need. So we're going to talk about how to get this into our database. We're going to talk about how to get in the all the bus types, right? We want to get all that bus types with your part number, with your stock number, with your description, to get all that information in there. And maybe you want it to look different. Maybe you want a different color or something like that. We're going to talk about that. Also in the below grade, there's all of that as well. So if we come up in the settings in the below grade, we have all that information in here too. So we want to be able to do this work, right? You want to get this information in. So when I place a cable, let's make sure I can place a cable. I'm just going to pick circular surfaces just for fun, just to place a cable and place it from here to here. And we have a cable placed. So if I look at that cable, it has metadata in it. So for those new users, we can look at the iProperties of that. We have a title, we have part number, stock number, description. So this is all the metadata we want to add to it. We even have custom properties if we want to have those in. You can also see that this cable, it has a length which comes standard, but we can change the material and the appearance, the color of that cable as well. So I just wanted to show you that is where we're going to get to today. And to get into that type of aspect, we need to get into the SDS Content Editor. So if we look at the Content Editor, let's come up into the Content Editor. This is where we're going to be working today. So we're really going to be working in here a lot so that we can see all our, here's my flex conduit, all my flex conduit in here. And we talked about this a little bit in the last webinar we had on the Conduit. We talked a little bit about the content editor, but I'm going to focus more on this one. If you want to watch the last Conduit webinar that we had a month and a half ago, you'll see us changing the Conduit data in there as well. So this is what I want to get to talk about. everything I talk about today is available in our Substation Design Suite. So if you log into substationdesignsuite.com, you will find these help files. In these help files, there's a document just on the Sds Content Editor, and that's what we're talking about today. But there's other documents in here too that you may want to read. The installation guide. I get a lot of questions on the installation guide, and in here it talks a bit about the database in the Content Editor a little bit, but this is specifically on that. We also have a document just on the database. So I just want to point out that this data is available here, right? So you come in here and you can look at that. Also in the e-learning, if you go into e-learning, this is a paid subscription, but once you go in there, you'll find information on this as well with some pictures and steps to go through. So I want to stress that everything we're going to look at is available in our help files. So I copied down those help files, and you can copy them down from the site and save them. If you copy them down from the site and save them, you will not get the update when it comes through. If you looked at that site, by the way, we had 2 updates on here today, and that is a UDH bomb status video and a UDH status bomb status physical. So one on the PNC and one on physical. So there's 2 documents added today alone. Other documents that have been added recently are the release notes, orientation requirements. So we have some new ones in here already, and if we change one and we revise one, it's going to be on here. So if you do download them, keep in mind that you may be out of date. So when we look at the documents, here's an example of the document. Let's get up to the first page. I was flipping through it. But we have a document for the content editor. This is the one that's downloaded from the website. This is downloaded from the website as well. So I just want to stress that everything we're doing is available on the website. So here's the installation guide, stuff to follow and look at. So once we look at the content editor, we want to know where the content editor is. So right away, I picked up this Sds Content Editor, and it pops up this page, and I'm able to access this. So typically you would have a librarian in control of this page because it's going to edit the database. So you may not want everybody to have access to this, but you need access to change the metadata that we will have in here. So the location is in the content editor document, and we talk about it here. The executable is right here, right? So if you come in here, you can download this document and look at that location. Of course, this is going to be on a video as well, so you can pause and look at it. But if I come up, and I typically have shortcuts to my locations here because I'm in here a lot and discussing and talking to people. But if I come up here to Substation Design Suite, lo and behold, there is an executable here for Content Editor, and it's right here. So this is the item you want. You can right-click, and you can create a shortcut. And once you create a shortcut on this here, where is it? Create a shortcut. You can create a shortcut, and once you create a shortcut, it's going to paste it on your desktop so that you can have that shortcut. So again, this is identified in the document. So the database that we are changing, again, I also identified in the document. We'll come up in here, and you'll see that we are talking about the database in here. So the database is in the document, and here's the location here. So this tool adjusts this database, and let's look at the database. And here's the database we're changing, the SD3DB SDF. It only changes this file name. It won't change these others. So all these others I save as and create a new one. All right. So this is the way we we set it up and control it. So you can have multiple databases, but you're only going to read one at a time. And what Inventor does when it opens up, it reads it on open. Once it's open, it's going to read that database. It won't, if you change the database while Inventor is open, you may not see the changes. Okay, so it's the SD3DB file. So when I come in here, you can see in my Inventor, if I come in here, I have edited that file. I have a lot of fittings that I can play with in here and bring in, and I've changed all my cable information to be the way I want it. So one thing I want to make sure we cover before we go too much further is if we come into the, let's make this a little bit bigger so I can see it. This is the release notes. Again, this is on the website for 7.4. This was released just before the consortium a couple weeks ago. In here, we can see the many changes we made to it. I think this is one of my favorite releases right now. And if you look at the note on the bottom, users will need to update their version of the SD3DB file. So let's look at updating our file right away. All right, so that's what I want to look at first. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to look at my items in here. And if you look at my bare cable, this is one I've edited. This is my database that I have edited. I made edits to, so let's close my Inventor. So I made edits to this one already. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to come up into my database location, and I'm going to delete this database because I have it saved already right here. So I'm going to take the original one that comes installed with it. So once you install the new 7.4, it will install a new database, and it's going to be called this. It's just going to be called this name, and it's going to place it here. But you don't have to worry about losing your old database because your old database is going to be taken. It's going to be called saved. All right, so you won't lose your old database if you bring it in. So you'll always have this one here if you installed it. If you've installed it 7.4 since and you went, oh, I don't need this database, and deleted it without saving a backup of it or something like that, which would be prudent, it is still available to pull out of the SDS location in here. And this is, again, is in the documents that we talk about, but you can come in here and you'll find that database right here again. So there's a backup copy kind of hidden here. I don't want people going in here and deleting things, but you may want to copy it out if you've lost it. So right now I'm reading the original one that comes with it. So if I open up my content editor and I look at my files, right, I have different names in here. I have different colors. It's not the one that I've set up, right? So that's what we want to do. We want to bring this one up to the 7.4 release. So in order to do that, I'm going to turn the page. I'll come up to File, and there's a tool called Copy Bom Info from Old DB. So if you remember, I didn't get rid of my old DB. It's right here. I kept a copy of the backup. This demo 80 is old and I don't need anymore, but we're on 2019 now, so the 7.4 really. So I can use, by the way, this same database regardless of which Inventor I have installed. If I have Inventor 2016, 2017, 2018, or 2019, I can still use the same database for all of those Inventor versions. So keep that in mind. It's a kind of a neat thing the way we're doing that. So I want to bring the information from the default 7.4 release database and want to bring the information from my past old database here. So all we want to do is come up here come up here and go copy Bom Info from old DB. I'm going to copy that Bom Info. I'm going to select the one I want. I want this one. And I'll say open. And now it's copied in here. And you'll see that if I come up with my bare cable again, this is the way I wanted it to show, right? So this has now been updated. I can save changes. And it's kind of neat that it writes it to the database without having to save it right away. But you have it now. So now this is updated. All of my tables in here, every one of them has been updated to what I wanted here. And if you look at what we're doing here, aluminum 6061, there's no hyphen in here. Autodesk has changed that name format a couple of years ago, so I want to have that format in it. I typically want the default color. I don't like the shiny silver color. The shiny silver color is a little bit heavier for your video card to handle, that type of thing. So I change it like that. If I go out into another one, let's look at bare cable again. I know I have some copper in here. So I use copper satin. It's not as bright and shiny as just the pure copper selection. So this is the type of thing I will change. Now everybody may want to change their part number and stock number, description and that, and they can change it in here. And if I was going to change something in here and I wanted to change this cables from cables to wire or something, I can come in here and take this information, hit Control C, bring it down, hit Control V, right? And I can paste it in here, or I can paste the whole group in here. And it's tedious, right? I got to hit Control V down, Control V down, Control V, and it takes time, and it is a tedious task. So what I want to talk about then is what do we want to do with this? So now we have the information. We look at, you can see the number of tables we have in here. So we have a fair amount of tables in here. And I don't want to do all that. That's too much work to do in this area of tables. So what I want to do is bring it into Excel. So if I open up my Excel, I have created a handout, and it's in this webinar. And the handout is called, you'll see it in the handouts of the GoToWebinar tools panel. You'll see a handout called this, database tables. And in here, we have all our tables in here. So we're able to take this data, edit it in AutoCAD, right? And that you can do a find replace, you can do whatever you want. You can replace everything in the whole page to whatever you wanted. And you can paste it into our content editor. And of course we can go back. So if I come into sheet 1 here, and let's paste something into sheet 1. So I just show you how it works. So this is a really nice tool. I can come in here, and I can come in here and select a bunch of items. I'm going to hit Control C. And from Control C, of course, is the common Windows tool. And I can come in here and I can paste it in here, right? So now I have that information in here, and I can change this to SBS, let's say. I'm going to pull all this information down, SBS. So now I'm changing things in here. I can use all the Excel tools. I can use equations in here if I wanted to. And now if I want to bring this back in, I can highlight this and hit Control C. And I can come back into my table, and I'm going to scoot down to the bottom. What I like to do is just start a cell. I'll start a cell like that to paste it in. This is a little trick, I guess you can say. And I can paste that in here. And all that SBS data is now in here. So I've been able to bring it back and bring it forth and back and forth and have it available to me to edit. So it's a really nice way to do it because you have all those Excel tools. And this again is in the handout in the GoToMeeting panel. So this is a nice thing to do. So if you can come in here in your bare cables and you can change it to whatever name you want, however you want to format it, and bring it in here and use all of those tools. The other thing is that you can publish this as well. You take this, you can place it in PDF, place it in your vault, or place it wherever you want to store a document like this, and you'll be surprised by how many other people want to see it and use it or reference it, right? It could be from purchasing to other engineers. It depends on your company if they're even going to allow you to do that some places, but you know, it's that type of tool. So it's a very nice tool. It's really great for internal use for just the CAD department or the physical department, whoever's doing the work in Inventor, that they have a reference and they can find it easier. Maybe they can edit it as time goes by and feed it back to the librarian, and they can change it. So it's really nice to have that way. So I've made this for myself, and I put it in the handout, so you'll be able to go in there. We talked about, in the last talk we had with the webinar, we talked about Conduit. If we come into my Conduit straight, you will see in the Conduit world that we have different Conduit, and then I have different Conduit families down here with different radiuses. You can see how the way I would set it up is with the radius in the Conduit name. Now, this isn't going to be in the metadata of the Conduit when it's placed. It's just the name in here. So when you're in Inventor, I shut Inventor down. When you're in Inventor, you will see that description with that radius. So that is the radius for the Conduit. So if you watch last month's webinar, I talked specifically about creating the Conduit and creating different radiuses so that you can have multiple radiuses in one run. I talk about a method for that. So I'm going to open up my assembly again. So you did get a handout this time, but it's an Excel handout rather than pizza handouts. But that's the way it is. So if I come into my below grade cables, come up to settings, and I look at my Conduit, I have all that Conduit here, and you can see I have the different radius. So if I want a 2-inch radius 24-inch, which you can buy as a custom size, or it could be a standard depending on the manufacturer, or I can run with 2-inch radius 9.5, which is the typical standard that a Conduit manufacturer would have. So this is the type of thing we want to be able to set up. Same as in the settings of the cables. If I want different cables, I can do that as well. I'm going to have the description I want in there by editing that. The other aspect to this data, for those who are not familiar with it, you can add custom iProperties in here. So you can come in here, and if I add a custom iProperties, I'll call it SBS1, and I can add that custom iProperty. I'm going to add SBS2, and add and done. Now I have those iProperties available for all of them. Let's get this a little bit bigger. Right? So I got SBS1, and it doesn't matter which page I go to, I'm going to have those additional iProperties, and those are going to show up as custom iProperties in the part when it's placed. All right, and if I were to copy this out and stick it into we can have different names. I don't want to go through too much here. So you have different names, but if I were to copy this out again and put it in my Excel, I would have those conduits, and I would have these custom iProperties and be able to bring them back and forth, right? And I have those custom iProperties here. We don't get the titles, but we know what those titles are, and we can place them in. So that's why I got the titles here. All right, so we have that ability as well to have custom iProperties in there. You'll notice when you're running through here that the bare cable, what am I in here? Below grade cable. If I look at below grade cable as cable size 2 is weight, right? Size 3 is strength. If we don't have it filled in here, it's not going to be a big deal. But if we need it, we want it, right? So if I wanted to add the strength, I could do that. We're working more and more towards getting more of the sag and tension relation going in our cabling. It's working well with the shield wire, and I think it's only a matter of time to get it elsewhere as well. So we'll see what happens with that. But you need that strength in the to do the tension. So if you look at the bare cable, control cable, so we're able to do that. Not all of these are used. You can see a number of these are unused, so that's why they are blank, because it is unused. I would refrain from putting other data in here. I would not put in something like that, because I don't know how it's going to react. It may look at there and see a field in there. If it's unused, you're fine to leave it blank. But I wouldn't put something strange in there. All right. So that's generally the aspect of the below the bare cable, control cable, and conduit BOM info page. So that's what we're talking about here. So I'm going to move on to the next one. And again, there's going to be Q&A time at the end. What I want to do is talk about placing parts in and assembly. So if we come over to my cable fittings page, you'll see it blank because I got the wrong one. So let's go in to close this off. I don't want that open anymore. I'm going to change my database to my demo database. Let's delete that guy. And let's take this one, Control C. And remember, this is a 7.4 release. And I'm going to change the name. And remember, Inventor only reads the database on open. All right. So here's my database, the 7.4 demos database that I use. And I open up my edit tool, and you can see I got cable fittings in here. I got other fittings in here, and you go, wow, that's kind of nice to have. So let's look at how that works. I'm going to open up Inventor. And these labels can be whatever labels we want them to be. They don't need to be this name. You would, of course, name it to what your company needs or your customer needs. So we're going to open up this. It's going to read the database and only reads it once on open. And open up my model again. Nate in P&C gets more people attending his than mine, and I think it's because he runs less. I think I run too many. I should run less. Maybe I'll get more. We have 38 attendees, it looks like. So if I look at here, and we are going to look at my above grade tools, and you can see if I pull this down, I have items I can pull down and bring in directly. So I can pull these items in, and I can build my items from that. Now, to remark on this is that this is bringing in a static name. It's going to be, doesn't matter what project I'm going to be in, it's going to be the name that it was saved in the database from. So if we look in here, it's going to be file name of this, right? That's going to be the file name it's going to be. So I can edit this and change it and do whatever I want to whatever my customer or my company wants. But I'm able to do that. So let's go back into this. So that's the key thing. It's not multiple across projects. So you could use it for your project and start it, and then maybe rename them using Vault later on when you go to sign it in so that you got the proper names. I'm not sure how others work that out. I wouldn't mind feedback on that. If people are using it, I would be happy to hear feedback. So I'm going to open up my Bay assembly. And we're going to look at it. And if I wanted to place something from there, it's just typical. I can come up to my above grade tools, fittings, and let's say I want to place this Ceph core part, and I can place it on my fitting here, and I don't like that, so let's rotate it. So we're able to do whatever we want, and it's directly from here. I can delete that. So that's the thing we want to do. So if you look at this, I have categories in here, and you can see the categories in here as well. So my groups, not categories, I have different groups. So I got hardware group, and you can see it's these pieces here, and I have bus, bare cable, paired group. So I have a number of these in here. If you look at the very bottom, it's an assembly of pieces, right? So we're able to bring in assemblies as well. So all of these will bring in assembly, and you can see that when you hit select and bring it up, it will say assemblies, IPT and IAM, right? So that's where you know you can bring in an assembly. So if I bring in the assembly, let's come up here to my fittings, and this is my different groups. So I'm going to come here, and I have a little Ceph core assembly here right now. And I'm going to put that Ceph core assembly here, and there we go. So I'm going to rotate that item. I don't want it there. And I'm going to say yes. So the key thing when you're placing an assembly in, let's find this in the browser. You can see it in the browser. The key thing, the first item in here, it's kind of hard to see down there. Let's open it up. The first item in here is that bifurcator, if I pronounce that right. So this Ceph core piece here is the first one, and that's the one that the software is going to look at to mate up in the assembly. So it's going to look at this one. It's going to ignore these other ones. And there's no reason these other ones can't be maybe a bolt or a nut if that's what you wanted, or maybe you want to have extra fittings like this. There's a number of companies out that I've worked with now that will do standard assemblies of items like this, and they would have them in. So it's kind of nice that way to do things. But it's going to be looking at this very first item before it puts it in. So it needs all the information, and in this case it only needs the NEMA face. All the other items, we're not attaching wire to it. We just need NEMA face. All right, and the little trick here, if you guys want to know, to make sure it only reads that NEMA face, this face is a slight different height, 0.05 of an inch different height, so that when it finds an NEMA face, it's going to find it on that. It's not going to get mixed up with another one. I don't want it mixed up. So that's a little trick we do in there. That's top secret. I shouldn't be sharing it with you. Eh? But of course, it's in training too. If we talk about training, we'll talk about that. So that's the type of thing we can do with that. We can bring in assemblies as well. So all of these can be edited. Not all of them can have groups, right? So if I want to bring in a mechanical vibration dampening, I can do it as simple as that. It's a really nice and sweet thing to do. So I have all of these fittings I can bring up. So I'll also add bus parts in here as well, just so I can put a bus part on the end of an assembly here, right? So I can put that piece in there so quick and easy. So when I'm doing my bus, I'm able to do that. So I'm going to leave this aspect, but I think a lot of people miss that you can put in assemblies. Now, the other thing I should mention just before I close off, when you're placing these in, what the SDS tool does, it reads the project file looking for the name of the file first. So let's talk about that for a minute. So it's going to read, if I come into it's going to read the project file first. So it's going to read this file where this is searching for pieces. It's going to search in there for the part before it takes it out of the database. All right. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a good thing. If you have it slightly tweaked for a specific project, you can do that type of idea. So you're reusing the parts inside the database, inside your work area. The other thing I should mention with that, I did a webinar some time ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago. If you look at the background color, it's all white, right? On that icon is all white. And what you want to do before you place your pieces in, you want a constant background color. So what you want to do is save the parts with a background of white. And then when you place it in, it looks really, really nice. To do that, you can run the Inventor, what's it called? The Inventor. There's probably project under task scheduler. If you run the task scheduler and run that and change your background to white before you run the task scheduler, rebuild the parts, compact the history, that type of thing, then you have all white backgrounds in the look that you want. So you can put all your fittings in that and make it nice and pretty. All right, so that's placing parts in assemblies. So the last thing I want to talk about is edit built-in models. All right, so we're going to have a Q&A afterwards, and I'll have the mics turned on. So when you come into here, we got edit built-in Inventor models. So quite a number of these we can come in here and change, like the ground grid mold, ground grid, even the flex conduit, we can add things to it. So we don't really want to change something like the flex conduit, but we may want to change the ground grid mold. We may want to change that instead of, the file name might be called the ground grid mold still, but the eye properties might say parallel crimp clamp, right? That's a common thing to do. So you may want to extract that item, look at it, change it, and place it back in here. So, and it will still place it as standard as long as you meet the requirements. Like if I come back into here, look at one of our documents, the part automation document, and we look at the ground grid mold down here, right? As long as we have this work geometry in it, it doesn't matter what shape, what color, or anything in here. You can change the eye properties. So what I'm finding is a couple people are saying, well, I'm fine with it looking round. I'm fine with it looking copper in color, but I'm going to call it a ground crimp clamp, a parallel crimp clamp, and be able to put it in. So in this tool here, I can take this ground grid mold, I can extract it, and in here I'm going to put it to the desktop, save, and now that it's extracted, I'm not going to close this, but I'm going to minimize things, and I'm going to open up that ground grid. Here it's on my desktop. I can come up here and say, here, description, it's not going to be a mold anymore, it's going to be ground grid crimp clamp, maybe. I'm sure you guys will have a better name than I am. And I can apply that. So now when that's placed, it's going to be called that, and I can have my own part number in here and my own stock number. And I may have some custom eye properties in here that I want to add. I can add all that in here, apply it, close. Now I'm going to save it. It's going to migrate, of course. And I'm going to close this file, and I come back into my tool, and I can replace it. So you notice I never shut this tool off while I did that. So you don't shut the tool off. These notes are very good for following this, and I can replace that fitting. So the ground grid clamp is one that I tend to change. Another one is the, I saw it in the document here, the bus coupler, right? This bus coupler, I'll often change that one because I like the one I've driven. I've created better than that one. So we can change some of these in here. I wouldn't change a lot of these, like the wire one. There's really nothing in here to change the bare cable one because all the I properties are being populated anyhow. So, and we can add custom I properties. So I kind of stay away from the ones that are in the on the Conduit and Bom Info. So with that, I think I'm finished. I went about 4 minutes past my 40-minute estimate. And we're going to open it up to questions. And what I'm going to do is bring up the mics and see what happens. Now I got a number of questions in here already, so I'm going to allow people to talk, I hope. I don't know if I can do that with our new setup. There. I'm not sure if all mics are able to run now, but I'm going to go through the questions posted here already. All right. So Jeremy asked, can we add another standard I properties to this for it to populate automatically? If not, is there a plan to add in the future? Can we add other standard I properties? Well, you can add as many standard I properties as you want. So Jeremy, you're going to have to expand that for me. I'm trying to turn on the mics. I turned them on, but you can see that they're still on mute. So if you guys can try your mics. Oh, Jack's mic is turned on. So Jack,
yeah, my mic's on. Can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I can hear you. So this is the first time I tried it. So if you guys want to shout out, go ahead. But I'm going to read through the text met questions here first. Curtis, handout section only has spreadsheet. Don't see the document Steve mentioned. It should be the handout should be that Excel file, and in that Excel file should have these tables in here. So I can email it to you guys if you need it, but it should be in the handout if you want to pull it out. Is there any work, here's from Dennis, any work being done for sorting the info, sorting by stock number, etc.? Well, the sorting the info, you can of course sort in Excel, but that's not going to help you too much in the Inventor world. The sorting here, if I come up to the cables, I'm going to be able to sort by description or name or title, but it's all going to be the same using the description of the cable type. So that is something that was brought up to others, and if you guys push us enough, maybe we'll add another column in here so we can see maybe the name of it as well. So you might want to go by, even though this is part number, we don't see the part number here. So maybe that's something we can work on. Jeremy again. Also, did they fix the random crashes with Content Editor within the new update? We did some work on the Content Editor, so I hope random crashes are corrected. Really, if we can be specific on what caused the random crash, that would always help. Dennis, can you explain more on the unit list drop-down and set material drop-down? All right, so I think you're talking about over here. I really kind of leave that alone. I find it was good for the older versions of Inventor and such. But over here, we have these tools here. So what we had was a problem with older Inventor items that, you know, when they changed the name of the item from aluminum 61 with a hyphen to not, you know, we had to bring it in here that we could bring in the other name as well. So I rarely use this type of thing. I would come in down here and change it, in usually in Excel as well. Okay, let's look at Todd's question. Why did the work geometry naming change for part automation in SDS 7.4? Work geometry name change. I don't think the name change happened. I think it's there's some legacy names that still work, like cable for the work point. Sometimes it's called cable endpoint, I believe. So it might be in the document.
I had some errors as I was installing some cable using that geometry you're showing, and it didn't work. So I went back to my parts and changed it according to what the error message said, and then it worked.
All right, if you can send that to me, Todd,
Okay.
that'd be a great thing to point out. I don't mind getting emails. You can go to SDS support and bring it out. That way,
Yeah.
if you go use SDS support, there's a whole team that gets it, and then we can look at it specifically.
Okay.
But most of the legacy ones will work with the new, simpler names. And I shouldn't say they're new. They're like 3 or 4 years old. So, Corey, is there a way to have the add-on check a library path in the project file instead of the workspace before placing the connector from the SDS2-based part assembly reuse? When you're placing the part, I would hope it follows our settings here. Oh, I know what happens. Okay, so this is for the automated items like the bus, the cable, the conduit and such, and we're able to locate what folder it goes to, right? So we have different items in here. So typically when you add a fitting in here, if I just add a fitting here, it's going to look in my database first and pull the one out of the database, out of my file, project file location. So it's going to pull out of my project file location first. So if I have in my project file location all my fittings, right? If I have my library of fittings available, it's going to pull it out of here first. If I don't have that available, it's going to put the fitting in the assembly that it's belonging to. And this is just basic way that the SDS tool works is by placing it items in the assembly that it's being attached to. So if you don't have it in your file, in your fittings folder, it's going to place it, maybe it might place it in bay 1, right? So here, I placed this piece in here on bay 1, and it placed it in bay 1. So if I had this in a either a fittings location, maybe I had a hardware folder or maybe even a subfolder. Sometimes I have subfolders in here for different types of fittings, conduit fittings, cable fittings, fitting assemblies and such. You can have different folders in there. Can we get notified when there is a help file added or updated? That's a good question. We are doing some updates to the website presently, but I'm not sure if it's going to affect us that way. It would be nice to have a subscription service that way. I'm not sure where we're at. That's a good question to bring up and make an enhancement on that.
Steve, I possibly can answer that. I know there is features on part of our support portal where you can subscribe so that you'll be notified if there's a new article posted. I'll double check into the SDS articles and see if there's a subscribe button. If not, then I know who to talk to get it there. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
You're welcome.
I love that name. So that's a good answer. But once Ryan gets back to me, then I'll see if I can put it as an enhancement request or not, if need be. Okay, Jeremy. So we can populate category or keywords in any other standard iProperties. Oh, okay. So this is related back to the. Jeremy, do you got your mic on? So you want to add iProperties to the standard ones. Is that it? I'm not sure what you're asking here. so I'm not sure what you're asking, Jeremy. If you can put on your mic, then we can talk about it. And we'll go on to the next one. You show adding custom iProperties, but not adding non-custom standard Inventor iProperties that are not currently in the tables. That's another interesting one. What you could do to work around that, you can have your custom iProperty to be filled, and then in the standard one go equal to that custom iProperty and change it that way. I'm not sure if we can do that. I'm not sure if that would work. I'd have to test that. But that's it. An interesting question.
Can you hear me?
Is that Jeremy?
Yep.
You made it back from New York.
Unfortunately.
I didn't think you were going to leave.
So the issue is the toolkits are already populating certain standard ones like stock number, part number, name. We need to be able to populate more than just those standard iProperties when it creates the parts.
So you're asking,
we need to be able to populate like category for automatic lifecycle assignment within Vault, things like that.
Yeah, that's a good one, and I think that's what Stephen Katz was saying here too. So
yep.
I think that's something that we can work on as an enhancement. I get these questions recorded in the webinar results, so I can look at them. Okay, where can we get a copy of this workbook? That Excel workbook is in the handouts of the webinar. If you look at it, you should be able to pull it off of that. If not, send me an email and I'll get it to you. You could also make your own. There's nothing really special about it. It's just charts. Nielsen, can we import and export the files to Vault, add SQL for the same setup for all computers as well as auto updates? Can we import and export the files to Vault? Nielsen, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so what I was looking... all right, yeah, so what I was looking at was, let's say like these are basically data that's coming out. That data, could we put that into SQL so that when we're updating the data in SQL and everyone's pointing to the same SQL database, that all the data would be updated across all computers? And using an Access is probably a front end to pull from SQL to do all the updates?
Are you talking about updating the database?
Yeah, because you just did it with Excel, but you were doing a copy and paste to bring it,
yeah,
and then bring it back. We were hoping to just create a link directly so that we can just update.
Well, we have nothing like that now. But we do have a method of having one SDS, one database file that can be used for all users, right? There's a configuration page that we can work with that. So you can change one file and we'll change all your required ones.
Okay, but there's no way, still without copy and pasting, that you could just automatically be updating?
Not presently, but I don't think it's something you're going to change too often, right?
No, but it's in case we need to have that option.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I have it recorded in the Q&A here, so I'll bring it up with developers as well.
It would definitely be nice to tie that into the UDH, since the UDH for most utility clients are pulling from their Maximo or SAP systems and have it automatically populate that way. That would be awesome. I think it shouldn't be too hard to do, but I think it would require the UDH and some more development on that.
Yeah. So there's a bit of development for the content editor too on that end, because we want to get it separate from the program right now. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of work that way. So I'll bring it up with others. Okay, I have Nick here. Is SDS working to centralize the SD Content Center for multiple users? Currently, yeah. So right here is a tool here in the Substation Designer config here that we can change. If you change one database, it's going to change them all, right? Whenever a boot up starts. So you can do that now using this config file. I'm not the expert in it, but we do, of course, have experts to help you step through that. One of the enhancements is to have a choice of databases to run and be able to centralize it, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen. There's a fair, like I said, previous question, there's a fair amount of work that we can do on that database. Okay, Nelson, you have another question, or did I read that one? Yeah, I did read that one.
Yeah, you read that one.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else want to talk or have a question or?
A separate question. Under utility content online, you have lots of things to download, and there's a spot for request content from a manufacturer. Where does that request go? I made a request last week and never heard anything.
The ether.
Was where?
The ether. It goes in and gets logged. Don't worry about that. It does get logged. But right now we are working with trying to bring in other vendors. You saw it at the consortium if you were there that we brought in Southern States, and we got CEFCOR there already, and ABB stuff. So we're trying to get it to a point, and if we have a group or a large number of requests, that would be really nice to have to say, hey, Waukesha, we have 500 of these requests for your parts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really, we have to get the a number of people asking, right?
I'm making contact to suppliers out on the western side here where I am, and once I explain what I'm looking for, they're often open up pretty easily, just as me as a single user, to signing a confidentiality agreement and sending me stuff. Mm-hmm. But some of them are harder to get into, and I saw that request and I thought I would shoot one in there for a Seco switch, and I never heard anything back related to it. So I guess one thing would be nice is that if somebody sends a request, you kind of let us know that, yeah, you got it. I never saw anything.
Well, we do get it. And again, if we get a number of it for Seco, we will be able to say, hey, look at the number of people here. And you mentioned there about the confidentiality agreement. That is our crux or whatever, our problem with working with the vendors is that they're afraid of sending too much information to it. So what Southern States did, they've simplified the model so that they're not passing that information across and they're not worried about the confidentiality. So we're really hoping that Southern States with their complex parts, CEFCOR is a little bit different because it's all NEMA standards or very similar to that. So there's some special things that you don't see in the CEFCOR parts that they hide. It could be manufacturing methods, but we don't see it. But it's more apparent in things like switches and, of course, circuit breakers and such. So if we get the amount of people asking and pushing, it will only help. And I think it will start as an avalanche. I think it's just trying to get it going first, and once we get it going, that snowball will roll.
Yeah, that's exactly where I ran into it. Was they were afraid of the information within the model, and I said, well, I don't want the information in the model. I just want the outside surfaces so we can see the thing, and then put the properties on it for the material list. And they were all good with that. So it wasn't really that hard to get them to send us stuff.
Well, that's great news, and maybe I think Jack is online. He's working on that end. I'll bring it up to him if he didn't hear that. What company was that?
the company I was, what's that? The company I got to send us stuff?
Yeah.
Pasco are out here in Forest Grove, Oregon.
Well, that's a big one.
We're getting switches from them, and Travis Pattern in Spokane, Washington. They've been very easy to get stuff from. They send stuff to me within probably half an hour to an hour.
Well, I'll send that stuff to Jack, and maybe you can reach out to him, and maybe we can get more in there. Because, like I said, I think it's going to be an avalanche once it starts, because so many people want your business, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and Seco switch manufacturer, we're seeing a lot of stuff being requested for that. So it would be nice to get a variety of switches and operating hardware from them.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Todd. Okay, it's after 1 o'clock. Do you guys want to keep going? I'm sorry I don't have any pizza handouts, but I did have a handout with the Excel file.
Thanks, Steve.